Supervisor Kersten. Here. Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
And Trustee Joseph.
Here.
So moved.
Support.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Trustee DeMink. Yep. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Item 5, presentations tonight. We have 2 presentations scheduled tonight. One's a fill-in. I would ask that Mr. Kerry Jantz, representative from Congresswoman Lisa McLean's office, approach the podium. And if you would so, please announce great news for Chesterfield Township.
Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it. On behalf of Congresswoman Lisa McLean, wanted to announce that we're happy to bring back to our communities almost $22 million in 12 community-based projects. And Chesterfield Township is the recipient of the largest project for their pump station. And she is just ecstatic about bringing, it's our money. So we're just bringing our money back to us. So, she's very happy to do this and happy that she was able to make a difference. So thank you very much. $4 million. Yep. So.
Thank you very much. And
You're
if you
welcome.
would, please pass along our thanks to Congresswoman Lisa McLean and tell her we owe her a coffee.
I've done that. I've
She
done
has
that already.
a free invite to Chesterfield Township with a get-out-of-jail-free card anytime she wants to come this way.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd also like to thank my assistant, Karen Garvey, who worked with the Congresswoman's office diligently from day one over a year ago to apply the DeMink pump station application process and got that in there for us. So, Karen, thank you very much. You did a great job. Our next presentation is the one and only Candace Miller, Drain Commissioner, and this is in regards to the Chesterfield Interceptor. I asked after numerous meetings with them in regards to the Chesterfield Interceptor, I invited the Drain Commissioner out here with her staff to give us a presentation on the status of that Chesterfield Interceptor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and to all the board members as well. Thanks so much for putting us on the agenda and putting us on early. I appreciate that. I don't have $4 million to give away here. I hate to follow Carrie, but we're going to talk about something that is a big value to Chesterfield Township, actually a $50 million plus asset that we want to discuss here tonight. And this is a piece of infrastructure that is critically important to Chesterfield Township. Chesterfield is the only one who uses it. Nobody else anywhere in Macomb County uses this interceptor except Chesterfield Township. And as the supervisor mentioned, we've had a number of different meetings. I've met with some of you previously. We have been before this board a number of years ago, several years ago anyway, on the same issue. And the only thing that's really changed during that time is the pipe is getting older, and like all pieces of infrastructure, needs some work. So we want to talk about all of those things tonight. And I think what I will do is just turn this over to my deputy. Brian Baker is here today. He's going to go through a bit of the PowerPoint, and we understand there won't be a vote tonight, so we're just making the presentation. But at the conclusion, we will answer any questions, of course, anybody has. And Brian will go through a bit of this history, and then Vince Astorino is with me as well, who is our operations and flow manager in charge of all of that. And he's going to talk to you about the status of the pipe, what kind of condition it's in right now. We've had some inspections done. He's got some pictures to show you what it looks like, which is not very good. And as I say, it needs some work. And then Joe Viviano also joined us tonight, who is our legal counsel. And he and your counsel, Mr. Siebert, have talked about this quite a bit, and hopefully they've come to some sort of a resolve on a contract if we get to that point. And anyway, I thought I'd bring everybody here in case there's anybody that has any questions of any of them. So with that, I'd ask Brian to come on up.
All right, thank you, Candace. We've put together a PowerPoint presentation for you. I want to briefly go over it. So this pipe, this is a sanitary sewer pipe. It was constructed in 1987. It's over 6 miles long. Roughly goes from 21 mile in 94 up to a little bit short of 26 mile in Gratiot. This pipe was built on behalf of New Haven, Lenox, and Chesterfield. It eliminated the New Haven wastewater treatment plant back in the day, and also some of the Chesterfield lagoons that you use. So that was a significant environmental impact. And it also provided sewer service to the prison back in the day. That is now serviced by the NGIs, no longer serviced by this pipe. From what we're told, this was a very difficult project to install this pipe. The soil conditions were tough. It was an open cut installation, and it's 20 to 25 feet deep in the ground. You can see some of those pictures during construction. The project, as I said, was constructed through this office for Chesterfield, Lenox, and New Haven with multiple funding sources. You'll note that the majority of the cost was paid for by the U.S. government. The state also contributed. Chesterfield's share was less than 15% of the total cost. In 2003, an agreement was established to construct the North Gratiot Interceptor. That redirected Lenox and New Haven's flow to the NGI. I think a portion of Chesterfield's went to the NGI as well. At around 2013, the NGI project was completed, and since that time, the only flow going through this Chesterfield interceptor pipe is the flow of Chesterfield itself. And then as part of that 2003 agreement, when the NGI was established, Chesterfield requested and the county agreed that Chesterfield would then take over ownership of this 27-inch pipe. We did, the office back in 2016 did apply for and receive a SAW grant, $600,000 to inspect the pipe. Discussions were ongoing with Chesterfield regarding the pipe condition and its ownership since 2017. And in June of 2018, we came to this board and provided an overview of the results of that SAW grant inspection. 5 years later, Chesterfield and Macomb agreed to re-inspect to confirm the previous results and seek a second opinion on the condition of the pipe. And we hired Fishback and Doach to perform that inspection. So I want to bring up real quick Vince Astorino, who will speak to some of the inspection findings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go through a little bit more of the technical details, so I apologize in advance if I put anyone to sleep. So from the most recent inspection, you'll see this table here of every single segment of pipe through that entire approximate 33,000 foot reach. There's a total of 93 segments, and what a segment is essentially from manhole to manhole is one pipe segment. Within the scoring, you'll see a POF, which is a probability of failure. What this means is essentially from 0 to 1.49, it's basically a brand new pipe or in excellent condition. From 4.5 to 5 on the other side of things, the pipe is essentially reached the end of its useful life and is at risk of failure. So those segments right there, there's actually 5 segments that are in that most critical range right now, a little over 2,000 feet. The rest is kind of scattered throughout, and I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail. Go back. So here's a video from a reach that's in between Cotton Road and 23 Mile along I-94. This is one of the segments of pipe that was rated within that probability of failure of a 5 in that area. You'll see there the structural rating score was a 5, the O&M score was a 5, everything was a 5 through this reach. The pipe itself has severely degraded through this area. You can see it where you're seeing that aggregate exposed on the walls. This also has a very large, what they call a gusher, so infiltration getting into the pipe. So this was just an example of one of the areas that's in that critical segment. From that, once we had all the results, we started looking at different rehab methods for how we were going to take care of this pipe and get it back up to a serviceable state. From that, there was 2 main methods that were kind of pulled out of there that were the best for this. One is cured in place pipe, and then the other is spiral wound PVC liner. Both methods are like a pipe within a pipe that you could install. It's a structural rehabilitation. It will protect against further hydrogen sulfide damage and will not impact the flow capacity of the pipe, even though you are putting another pipe within it and shrinking that diameter. The spiral wound PVC liner, that's a newer technology that we're actually testing within the county right now. It has a potential longer service life within it. It has some benefits such as the cured in place pipe is a little more, or can be a little bit more costly because you actually have to bypass all of the flow out of the pipe and around. And then in order to put that liner in, the spiral wound PVC liner, you can put it in without having to bypass. So you do have some capability to potentially save some money there. From the different inspections and the ratings that we found, we wanted to come up with a method that would be fiscally responsible to break this out into 3 different phases of criticality. You'll see at the top the phase 1, that's the little over 2,000 feet. That's most critical, that needs to be taken care of immediately. We came up with an engineer's estimate to line that section. And these are all costs for cured in place lining, because that's the most available product in the area right now. But the base cost for that was estimated at $606,000. Due to market conditions and any design costs and construction administration services, we did put on a 30% contingency to that number. So the total estimated cost was $787,000. The phase 2 portion, which is, it's shortly behind the phase 1. It's definitely going to be highly recommended to be done within the next 5 years, I would say. That's a significant portion of this pipe. It's a little over 17,000 feet of pipe, 50 different pipe segments, and the estimated cost for that is about $4.6 million. And then ultimately, to finish the remainder of this Chesterfield line, there's the phase 3 portion, which is an additional 13,000 feet of pipe. For the phase 1 work, just because we know how critical this was, we did put together a bid package for this. This was a competitive bid package that we put out on November 17th, 2022. We had 3 contractors submit bids on December 20th, and 2 of those bids were actually under our estimate and a very good price, right around $400,000. With these numbers, we've established a 60-day bid hold period. So as of right now, they're just kind of out in limbo, waiting to move forward. But those would be good to go until February 18th of this year. I'm going to turn it back over to Brian.
Thanks, Vince. So for a quick summary, as I said, the county facilitated the installation of this pipe, and it was primarily paid for by the federal government, the state, Chesterfield, and New Haven. Lennox's share was primarily in the federal and state for the prison. Back in 2003, Chesterfield requested, and the county agreed, signed an agreement to honor Chesterfield's request for them to take ownership of this pipe when the debt was paid off. The debt has now been paid off. The pipe is only used, and has only been used for the last 10 years by Chesterfield, only their flow. The pipe is a valuable asset to Chesterfield, especially for future economic development. There is capacity in this pipe for additional flow, and it would only be your flow. The cost today, if you were to build this pipe, would be about $50 million. You've spent $1.8 million for a $50 million asset, even though it needs some repair. So we have now inspected and cleaned the pipe twice. We've gotten 2 different opinions, and we've confirmed the prior condition assessments. So we all agree that the pipe is in need of repair, and as pipes go, the conditions only worsen. Pipes don't improve on their own, and it's certainly far less expensive and better for the environment to avoid a sinkhole or a collapse. You'd be spending a lot of money to respond to that emergency, as opposed to being proactive and fixing the pipe under normal conditions. And there's some advantages for Chesterfield taking the pipe. You can control the pipe's use within existing capacity limits, so you don't have to seek county permission. If we were to do the work, it would be more expensive. We would charge county administrative and engineering costs, legal costs. We do have $320,000 left in leftover funds for this project that we can provide to the township. That will cover 80% of what we've gone out to bid for right now, the Phase 1 repairs. And as we heard tonight, there's certainly new opportunity for, not if it's not federal, but state infrastructure funding assistance out there as well. So as Vince said, the bid prices for Phase 1 repair are good until mid-February. And we are available to answer any questions, but I think Candace wants to get up.
Okay, good, thanks. So that's our spiel about the Chesterfield pipe. And as I say, we're certainly available to answer any questions that you have. This thing is something has to happen at sort of immediate here, I think, with Phase 1, if we want to take advantage of these bid prices. So we do have those funds there, so depending on when you take action or what have you, we have those funds available to the township, or if we have to do it right now or whatever, at least for Phase 1. You saw these gushers. Listen, I see these kinds of videos and about have nightmares because I know what can happen with that. That was just one, this pipe needs work. It's a very valuable asset, but it needs work, like all old infrastructure. So anyway, I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
Yeah, with that being said, I'll open up the board members. Trustee DeBing?
Candace, in your group, where you see the infiltration, I guess if the terminology is right from my old days with my old man, where the pipe is cracked and all that water's coming in. So we're getting all this infiltration into the pipe, extra water. So when this pipe flows into this Detroit system.
Why don't you get up here, Vince? You're going to answer this one, I think. All right. Go
When
ahead.
it flows into the Detroit system, it's metered, correct?
Correct.
So we are paying extra sewer charge for all this excess groundwater infiltrating the pipe that is not sewer water, it's just groundwater that's infiltrating through the seams, through these bad segments. Is that my correct understanding
You
of this?
are absolutely correct.
So we don't know how much extra water, I mean, by just looking at that and how many other segments were, as you call them, gushers. So that's adding to our sewer cost.
Correct.
Okay,
It is.
all right.
You've got a couple of gushers, weepers, which are not quite as bad as the gushers, but I mean, they soon become gushers, right? So it's old pipe.
Right,
older
so
pipe.
we're talking thousands of gallons, or you never know how much is being infiltrated through the groundwaters.
It's running nonstop, 24/7. So, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson? Trustee Joseph?
Thank you. I know when we first started this a few years ago, we had a rough idea, and the number we were talking about was somewhere around 1.4 million. That was pre-COVID and pre-inspection of this magnitude. I think this is a much more comprehensive evaluation of that pipe than we've ever, been seen. But the pipe was built in 1987, and there were, obviously the prison was the biggest thing going out there, but we also had, as was part of the presentation, the New Haven wastewater treatment plant, as well as the lagoon properties and the township's use of that pipe. And for roughly now 26 years, until the NGI comes along, there was a partnership or multi-use of that pipe. And when we originally started this discussion, there wasn't a whole lot of contribution in terms of repair and maintenance. And back then, we called it the Northwest Gratiot Interceptor. But there wasn't a lot of contributions in terms of maintenance, and this is not part of the MID, as I understand. This
It is not.
So this
No,
is a
this is
standalone.
not part
It's-
of the MID.
It never was. So the, going back and looking at some of your predecessor, Mr. Morocco, you've had a tremendous amount of work cleaning up a lot of things over there for sure. But we were presented back then with pretty clear evidence that we were the only ones, or if nobody was, I guess, in terms of the maintenance of that. So do the other communities who got the benefit of 26 years of utilization of this pipe have any, liability or any contributions to the shape that it's in now? They did get the benefit of using it for a quarter of a century, so.
We've explored that issue quite a bit. I was originally asked since when I first started talking about this pipe, and our answer is no. We don't think they're not interested in contributing to this now, obviously.
Sure.
And I would say that, if you say, should they contribute, on the other hand, they're probably thinking, well, gosh, we paid for this thing, now we're giving it to you. So maybe you should give them the money back. You gotta be careful what you ask for here.
Yeah. Well,
Think about it.
It is, and I remember when you came in a few years ago, I asked you at that time, what was, and the numbers were quite a bit different, what made this an asset, given the state of repair? You did answer that in this presentation, and that the cost of this pipe would be $50 million if we were to use it. But we looked at some issues, and I know we're not voting on it yet, and I haven't seen what the proposal is in terms of how we fix this, but there was an opinion written by Mr. Viviano, which was very clear that the township was, this was a township issue and that the county would be there to help us and support us, but by and large, the township was the sole beneficiary, and therefore, we had the bulk of the cost. But we did ask for our attorney to draft an opinion, and there was some belief that maybe, if we found ourselves at odds, that the worst that could happen to us is that we would go to court and be able to make our case for why the township isn't responsible for the repairs wholly. So I don't know what's changed there, and I'm sure we'll get that information before it comes to us for a vote. But is it the your department's belief that this, what would be $11 million right now if we were to repair the entirety, and make it whole, that the $11 million is rests with the township?
All of it,
Okay.
100%. I'm
Okay.
just telling you, 100%. I mean, there's
Well,
nobody
I
else.
appreciate your honesty. I get
It's
it.
yours.
Yeah.
It's your pipe. It's your flow. So there's, like I say, it's not part of the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, which is 11 other communities, including Chesterfield.
Sure.
But not this particular stretch of pipe. This is your own pipe.
Okay. And my last question is, can we get Mr. Jantz back, or does anybody have Ms. McLean's number? Because we're going to need a little bit more help. Yeah, perfect timing. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Well, you know, I mean, without saying too much, obviously the supervisor and I have been talking to, we're going to try to get you some money, but who knows, right? But there is all kinds of infrastructure money out there, so possibly, you know, everybody is lined up for it. But, you know, you have a case to be made here, I think, certainly. So anything that we can do to help with that, we certainly are and will continue. So, you know, here's one thing to keep in mind. Something has to happen with the pipe, you know. Listen, we have to maintain the infrastructure. So it really, in my opinion, it would, I mean, it is your flow, it's your pipe. If you want us to do it, I have to charge for all my folks, right? I have administration costs and all of these kinds of things, which you don't need to do that if you do it yourself. So it would seem, from that perspective of maintenance. But then again, as well, I think the economics of this, I mean, listen, all the years that I was in the Congress, I served on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. In fact, for many years, I was the only Michigan member on that committee. And we used to always say that throughout history, quite frankly, the economics has always followed the grid of infrastructure, whether it was wagon trains going out west, right? Then the trains came, then the interstates, you know, with the sewers running along them, now the aviation links, all of these things. So this is really very much of an economic impetus for a beautiful, beautiful community that many people want to settle at, whether they want to live here or work here or build here or put in their hospitals here. It's amazing what's going on. So infrastructure is a necessary component, obviously, critical component of all of that.
Well, we certainly have tremendous growth projected on the north end of the township, and I am starting to understand the asset feature of this a little bit more. I had a lot of questions, and I didn't necessarily like the adversarial tone that we had a few years ago. You've always been a great partner and advocated for Chesterfield, and so I'm confident that we'll be okay. And I just wanted to say up front, I've looked at this, and I'll continue to ask questions, and I'll do it in as respectful way as possible, and I just wanted you to know that.
Absolutely. That's your job.
Thank
I used to be a trustee.
I know you did.
I know the job.
I know you did.
Got to ask the questions, the hard questions.
Thank you.
Trustee Andrew.
Yeah, I think you've probably answered the majority of the questions I had. You know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there was talk about AEW. It was an older estimate of $1.4 million, and now it looks like to do it right, it's $11+ million. I do have some issues that I understand where your position on that. Up to 10 years ago, there was two other entities besides Chesterfield using this pipe. Had to add to it, maybe. I don't know if that wore the holes or all that water's coming in there, Trustee Demink, that we're paying for, or what? And the thing I want to know is there's continued reference to 2003. I know, what is it, 2028 that the township gets us no matter what, or is it 2027? According to when it was.
I don't know about that. You?
Well, 2003 was the agreement that Chesterfield requested the pipe when the bonds were paid off. The bonds were paid off in 2007. So
Okay.
Nothing about 2027.
All right, I thank you.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the commissioner's comments, and she has helped and opened the doors already in the proactive approach of kind of taking a look at this with some supplemental funding, both from our state leadership. So those conversations have begun, and with new leadership and new elected in those bodies, we've already began the conversations proactively in regards to this. So with that being said, Trustee Demink,
A couple more questions for your team while you're here. The
He wants to
breakdown.
talk to the engineer. That's
Yeah,
what he wants. He said,
the breakdown of
"Respectfully, let
that
me talk
pipe,
to the guy who's got
because
the
it's the age, is it just usually the breakdown? Or could there have been at one time something put into the sewer? Now, I recall back in the 80s in Chesterfield, back in the Schmidt complex, there was Chesterfield Chrome. They were dumping some type of chemicals in there, and back in the early 80s, they had to replace a whole lot of sewers in there because the chemicals that were dumped in from that plant on Richard West destroyed the sanitary sewer. So being that this was from the North Gratiot, Chesterfield interceptor, was there anything, to your guys' knowledge, any type of industry or manufacturing up there that anybody could have, chemical that could have dumped anything, or is that just normal wear and tear on a pipe that's that old?
Anything's possible. I
Okay.
don't know what's been in it over the years.
Right.
It looked like typical hydrogen sulfide damage that you see in
Okay.
concrete pipes, lower flows, you see that type of damage build up.
Okay.
So,
It's just a question I asked, because,
Yeah.
I don't know what type of industry, let's say, was up in New Haven, but, they didn't have that much of an industrial, and we just had North Bay up there off Gratiot. But, okay, thank you for your time, appreciate it.
That's just an interesting thing, just because I think this is all interesting. Vince has just mentioned about H2S. It's hydrogen sulfate. So it's sort of a unexpected consequence of the Clean Water Act. So this flow is becoming so much cleaner, but it agitates now a lot, right? It's really agitating. So it's extremely acidic. And so any of these old concrete pipes, we're about to do a project right at 21 in Garfield. It looks like those, caverns in Kentucky where the stuff is hanging down. It's the weirdest stuff that has happened there. And we're going to do, just like he talked about here, where you put the spiral lining in there. And it's an interesting new product, but whatever, whether you do that or you put Hobos lining in, or what we did in 15 Mile, and we're continuing. I've got 2 different projects over there right now. We have about $45 million worth of projects going on 15 Mile, the interceptor, for the mid, to reline because of all this H2S, what it's done to this pipe. The old concrete, everybody used concrete pipe back in the day. It's just falling apart, has to be relined.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions from the board? I
Okay.
want to thank you.
Thank you so
and
much.
your staff for
Appreciate your
coming out.
time.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And just so the board knows, there is, I will bring this back in the coming weeks for an action item, or at least seeking direction as where we go with this. As they had stated, there is pricing requirements to this, so take advantage of the work that they perform. Thank you again, Commissioner Miller. Item 6, department reports. Karen, do you want to start out with the department reports?
Good evening. I just have one department report from the supervisor's office and purchasing. We have been working really hard to get the DNR grant wrapped up for the funds for the Salt River Nature Preserve. And we did get notification that on December 12th, they did submit those funds to come into the township. So we are patiently waiting on those, but great news that we have those funds coming back to the township to reimburse us for that Salt River Nature Preserve.
Thank you. What I'd like to show real quick is a quick minute 30 video from Treasurer's Department, Treasurer Elliott, that it's kind of the direction that we're going, trying to get our online bill pay services. With the use of video service streaming, we'll put it on our website.
Treasurer. Here at our municipal offices, we like to make things easy for our residents. We now have several convenient ways to pay your utility bills and your property taxes. As always, you can come down to the municipal offices and pay either here at the counter or outside at the new blue drop box. Chesterfield Township now has a relationship with First State Bank, where you can make a payment inside or contactless at the drive-thru at any of their locations. The easiest way to pay your utility bills and tax payments is through the Chesterfield Township website, where you can use the e-check option for no fee. And the best part is, you don't even have to leave your house. For more information, please go to our website at chesterfieldtwp.org or give us a call here at the offices at 586-949-0400, option 6.
So we're going to try and produce more of these little snippets to put them out on our social media and public pages, so trying to help the residents enhance an online service rather than coming in person and offering additional conveniences to the residents. Further department reports. Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, just a few notes from our January 4th Public Safety Liaison meeting that Trustee Joseph and I were at. I'm going to kind of address a few things here. The Chesterfield Township Cadet Program, currently there's 6 cadets there. They've been vetted very well, and it allows the department to kind of peruse these gentlemen and ladies to see that we have an outstanding candidates. My understanding is 2 of them will be or are attending both Macomb and the Oakland County Police Academy as we speak. It's kind of refreshing in our community that I understand that there's 16 applicants for the 2 vacancies that will occur for that program, especially in the way the media is kind of beating up on law enforcement and public safety nowadays. Looks like we're going to have several, I won't give exact numbers, several veteran officers and supervisors will be retiring this year, so already the department's making arrangements to address that. Police dispatch, 1 part-time dispatcher, and I think there's three other openings. So far, 97 individuals have applied for those positions. 2 part-time clerical positions, 99 individuals have applied. Looking at the fire side of public safety, the fire department will be looking to fill a position of 2-time firefighters. There is an accreditation process in place for the fire department, continued professionalism at national standards. I will ask someone from either chief or representative to go through it. It's a multi-step and year process. Very good. The police department went through it a couple years ago. And mobile equipment, I don't know, Mr. Joseph, I'm going too far. We have the latest fire rescue unit, tremendous thing. It's being fitted out as we speak, and it should be available here on the 5th of this month. And finally, Chief Bassett will be going to the Fire Academy, 11 weeks, 40 hours a week of fun and games to enhance his ability as our Director of Public Safety. Thank you.
Yeah, just to pick up on some of the non-personnel issues that came out of our Public Safety Advisory Committee. The agenda item that we have in front of us today, it's actually on our consent agenda, is the DMS power contract, which will be simply a renewal. The big one is coming on we anticipate January 24th, and that is something that has been in the works for several years now, and it is our Motorola Dispatch Radio project. This is a major expenditure, all total. We anticipate somewhere around $1.2 million. These will be dispatch consoles, radios, cars, and it is a complete overhaul of a current radio system that is completely obsolete. Motorola stopped servicing this particular radio system several years ago, and literally the department has been buying radios on eBay and wherever you can find them for parts. It is kind of a scavenger hunt whenever we have these problems. So the overhaul of the system is way overdue. There have been no replacement parts or equipment available since 2020, new, and so we run into the, as I mentioned, the scavenger hunt. The anticipated financing of this, if you will, was some very good work with Director Bassett and his team, along with the Motorola people, and to try to stretch this out over 2 budget cycles, to attempt to split the $1.2 million into 2 budget cycles, with the most critical components being purchased this year and then completing the process in the 2024 budget. The work that's been done with the existing radios is really pretty impressive when you see the difficulties and challenges. Motorola is a sole source vendor, so it's not as if we can go out for bids. They are a proprietary sort of product, And I would also like to thank Mr. Siebert, who's been part of these meetings. Again, trying to navigate a $1.2 million expenditure and then being able to separate it over 2 years is really a pretty good trick. So we'll hear more about it. Next board meeting, the director will, of course, have very detailed information in our packet. And it was a lot to cover at our last liaison meeting. We do meet the first Wednesday of the month and try to cover as much as we can in the hour and a half that we spend together. So appreciate Director Bassett and his administrative team. We have always Chief Miller there, Captain McNair, and Lieutenant Kroll. So we get some very good insight and updates, and happy to bring those to the board and the public. Just one other department report, or what do we call these? The committee reports. The Library Board of Trustees meets. There's actually 2 meetings next week. You know that there has been a search for a new librarian, and there is a meeting on the 15th next week, Wednesday at 9 a.m. And, wait, that's not the right date. It is, I'm sorry. It would be the, oh, let me look. Sorry about that. Yeah, so there'll be a meeting on Tuesday at 9 a.m. and then Wednesday at the normal time of 6:30. So hopefully we will have some new announcements to make with regard to our librarian, but I will update the board as soon as it's official. Thank you.
Thank you. Further reports? We'll move on to item 7, the consent agenda. Deputy Neiser.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any of these items is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda are permitted.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Treasurer Elliott. Support. Supported by Trustee Domingue. Comments from the board? Or comments from the public? Comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public, I have a motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Trustee Domingue, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Deputy Neiser.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
And Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8, public hearings, there are none. Item 9, the regular agenda. Deputy Neiser. Item 9A.
Set a public hearing for Tuesday, February 14th, 2023, to hear comments concerning the allocations of 2023 Community Development Block Grant as required by the Housing Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Treasurer.
Support.
Trustee Domingue. Support by Treasurer Elliott. Comments from the public? Karen?
I just wanted to mention that this is a required public hearing that occurs on an annual basis.
Comments from the public? Comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Domingue, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 9A. Deputy Neiser.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Item 9B.
A recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to appoint Sean Elliott to the Parks and Recreation Commission to finish the term left vacant by Kathleen Norris, the term ending June 1st, 2023.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to make the
Support.
appointment, supported by Treasurer Elliott. And Mr. Elliott, you are here. If you would stand and rise, acknowledge. Mr. Elliott's a resident, a motivated individual, involved immensely with teaching and also the Anchor Bay Fishing Club. So with that, I thank you for putting the request in. Any comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. I would like to congratulate Mr. Elliott. I think he would be a great appointment for this position. So he's very involved in the community. He's overqualified for the position. I had the opportunity when he ran for trustee to meet him, and I think he's a good fit for this. So thank you.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the board? A motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve the appointment. Deputy Nysa.
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee DeMink?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Item 9C.
Item 9C, approve a recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to re-enter into a 12-month contract with Midwest Strategy Group LLC for governmental consulting services beginning January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve,
Support.
supported by Treasurer Elliott. Karen, do you want to cover this one for me?
So we do have Adam right here from Midwest Strategy, and he is actually going to be filling the role for David Hodgkins, who was our support for the last 6 months. Midwest has opened many doors for us. We have partnered with them on many projects, which we are currently still in process with. A couple projects that we have partnered with them on is the DNR. I personally have tried to contact the DNR and reach out to them on some issues that we were having, and we got no response from them. Midwest stepped in and they helped us out. Within a week and a half, we had a response from them. Same thing with MDOT. We were trying to partner with them on getting more grass cutting along 94 and 23 mile. It was very hard, you know, you got the runaround. And when Midwest stepped in, we now have a signed contract for grass cutting, more grass cutting than we've ever had in the township in that area, and it's actually gonna be fully paid for. So those are just a couple of the instances that they've helped us out and stepped in. Like I said, we're still working on many projects with them. And, you know, anything in government, it's always like a longer term to get it done. So with Midwest helping us, we've really done a lot in 6 months with their help. So I look forward to another 12 months, and hopefully they can help us get some money for this Chesterfield interceptor.
Thank you, Karen. I can't restate enough, Karen, just what she presented to us is they're a conduit to open doors, and they've definitely done that for us in my time while I'm here. So with that being said, Adam, present you. Any trustees or board members that have any questions, Adam's willing to entertain them. Trustee Joseph.
I don't know that I have a question so much as a comment. I know when the original presentation was made, there was some talk about something coming to the board with regard to an identified list of projects. And I haven't seen that. I don't know if that's just coming to the supervisor's office, but in terms of identifying what you intend to, we have a number of projects. Obviously, you just heard the biggest one probably in the township from Congresswoman Miller, his office, or Public Works Commissioner Miller's office, and the list is never ending. But I understood it partly as you know, you were coming in to the board and there wasn't a lot of political contact. That wasn't your world. You didn't spend a lot of time. But I guess the question I have now is, with the outreach that we have with our elected officials, you know, locally, regionally, why do we have to pay to get a return call from the DNR? Or why do we have to pay a separate firm to get us a call back from you know, any government agency, whether it be MDOT or the you know, the parks, or like why are we paying somebody to get us, you know, something that intergovernmental cooperation, and if somebody isn't returning a call to the well, I don't know if you're making the calls or your staff are making the calls, but then we go to our county commissioners or our state reps or our Congress representatives. We have great rapport. Why are we paying somebody to do that for us, do you think? Anybody?
I'll answer that. Because they aren't returning calls. We just didn't seem to register, particularly my name, my newness to the position. And then when we did reach out to our elected officials, they had a prioritized list, and we didn't seem to register there. What they have offered us is almost direct contact to state officials and individuals who actually control purse strings, individuals who actually run departments. And it's direct contact. It's not going through some of our local elected officials that are tied up with their own agendas or their own priorities. So honestly, it's the direct point-to-point contact that we get with those individuals in decision-making roles at the state level.
I understand you have like tremendous responsibilities here, day-to-day operations here with, you know, some of the problems that we've had. I don't even know how many hours you spend with that. But in terms of making a call to the DNR, you know, like it's difficult. Bureaucracies and the larger they are, the more complicated they are. But give me a list. I'll make some calls. I'll keep calling, and I'm real good with people. They tend to like me, and so like I'll just keep calling. You just keep calling.
It's funny that you mention it, because the DNR, when we started the discussion with Brandenburg Park, literally, we ended up in Roscommon at a DNR post that I think was just outside of Roscommon. And when I said Chesterfield, they go, Chester where? And Brandenburg Park. Well, where's that at? I don't see it on our inventory list. We don't, literally, hey, we'll get back with you, and then crickets. What Midwest did was went right to the DNR representative in the governor's staff. And literally that door, and Representative Hornberger picked up that ball and took off with it. And that sort of response was something that I don't think we could get with our Roscommon phone calls.
I'll tell you this. I don't like spending money to get return calls and the like, but I can't really argue with results. And there were a couple of things that we were struggling with, and you know, however it happened with the money that we spend to bring Midwest on board, I think we recouped our you know, our expenses many times over. And if the summation is we couldn't have got it without Midwest, you know, I'll have to accept that. But I think, as I said the night that the presentation was made, it's a first-class operation, there's no doubt, and there are some really talented people on your team. So, you know, maybe the cost-benefit and the return on investment, it certainly lines up. So I'm going to be supporting it. I'm just curious as to what we can do, but you know, maybe when we start to you know, register a little bit more, and we get some of the things that are being talked about in Chesterfield, maybe we won't have Chester where, you know, on the other end. So thank you.
And I appreciate those comments, and you're spot on. I think the presentation that we saw tonight from Candace Miller is exactly where this, if approved, this is going to be the #1 task. And I'll apologize to you, because I do recall the list of priorities. We did produce that, and maybe I did not send it out to the board, but I will definitely resurrect it and send it out, and then along with that, update it.
Yeah, I was actually just hopeful that maybe we can get it, you know, first quarter of the new year, maybe a presentation from Midwest that identifies, you know, some of the target projects that you've put on the radar. And I know that your team meets with Midwest on a regular basis, but a presentation so that the residents can see what the focus of the board and Midwest direction is in the first quarter would be great.
And again, my apologies, I thought we did that, but also, they send out quarterly reports, and I think we've been forwarding them on, and now that they become more relevant to us, we'll make sure you get them.
Great, thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. In no way I'm being judgmental of your organization, and I know that when it's all back in June, when you first appeared here, you were still the appointed supervisor, not the elected supervisor. So now you should be moving very well through the halls of government, whatever level that is. I personally, I know we're talking about it. These are abstract ideas. You explained, Karen, some things, what they've done. I still like to see the concrete things at this point. I'm still not ready. I'm only one. I'm just one vote here. It doesn't really matter. Nothing comes on the agenda unless there's enough votes for it. I still won't support it. I know in June we paid $4 grand, $24,000 for 6 months. This will call for a year for $48,000. Maybe next January I might think different. But right now, until I start seeing some results, I'll probably be a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. In reference to what Trustee Joseph said in your question on why do we have to pay Midwest? Well, we have to pay Midwest because picking up the phone, trying to get a hold of people requires work. And the acting supervisor, you know, we know he's overloaded with work, so he just doesn't have the time. And not only does it require work, but I have it, you have it, because I've seen you interact. You have to build relationships with people, and people have to like you. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that. So on the $24,000 that we paid back in June, I was a no on it back then, and I'm a no now. I mean, what I didn't hear tonight and what I most importantly didn't see up there, what return on our investment did we get for the $24,000? I don't want to hear open many doors. Midwest is helping us. I want specifics. I didn't see any specifics up there on what they did. So they were hired in for 6 months. The township spent taxpayer money, $24,000, but I've yet to see specifics on what Midwest brought to Chesterfield. So now the acting supervisor wants to spend $48,000 of our money to renew their contract for a year. Until I see results on what we got for the $24,000, are we out of our mind to give them another $48,000 because he wants it? Who cares what he wants? It's what's in the best interest of the residents. That's what's important. And then when I was going through the agenda packet, why are we even here tonight discussing this? On the agenda packet, it says that January 1st of 23, they were on board. He made a decision without even coming to the board on this. So, and that's wrong. So, spending $48,000, bringing them on January 1st, and our meeting is today on the 10th, totally inappropriate. Absolute no vote. Do the right thing for the residents. Look out for our tax money. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Adam Veschak, 47468 Bayside Circle West. Just couldn't agree more with the comments that were made by Trustee Joseph. And as a citizen, would just request Supervisor Kersten, if you could share that information that Karen briefly presented tonight, the return on investment for the $24,000 that was spent in 2022. Sounds like it should be pretty easily deliverable, and it sounds like we probably made that money back, so that's positive. But I would say overall, I agree that this seems like a bit of a, I don't know, it sounds like a great organization, but almost like a pay-to-play kind of thing that's happening here, and I question the necessity of it. I would hope that you would get some wind in your sails at this point and be able to navigate these waters on your own. But again, I would like to see some information on what's been accomplished thus far and the plans for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? We have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 9C. Deputy Neiser.
Supervisor Kersten,
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott,
Aye.
Trustee Anderson,
No.
Trustee Demink,
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Item 10, addendums. There is an addendum. There is a resolution for Parks and Rec, which we missed presenting at the last board meeting. This is a resolution that goes along with the DNR grant application for updated plans for Parks and Rec. Deputy Neiser.
Recommendation by Parks and Recreation to adopt resolution number 2023-5, resolution to adopt the Chesterfield Township Parks and Recreation Master Plan update.
So moved.
Do I have a motion to approve? Trustee
Support.
Demink, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Comments from the board? I'm sorry, Josh, did you have?
No, thank you, sir. I'm just here in support and just to expand on your comments, exactly what this is. We brought the Parks and Rec public comments, and now this is just a requirement by the DNR to close out the process.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, Deputy Neiser, call the roll.
Trustee Demink,
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott,
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten,
Aye.
Trustee Anderson,
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Item 11, public comments. There's a 5-minute time limit. The clock will start once you begin speaking. Floor is open to the public.
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. Good evening, Chesterfield Township residents and board members. My name is John Spica. To answer the question on the $24,000, in Italian, we say scatta. Scatta means zero. That's what we got for our money. Once again, I'm going to ask the acting supervisor, Bradley Kersten, to stop peddling his lie that Chesterfield Township in '23 is strong and sound and that we are in excellent financial health. We weren't in strong financial health in '22, nor are we in '23. This is exactly why people don't trust their political leaders. In the '23 budget, Chesterfield is running deficits in the general fund, public safety, Brandenburg, and water and sewer that total $3,392,634 in the red. That's not what I call excellent financial health. The acting supervisor uses fuzzy math. In the private sector, a budget like this is an embarrassment and ultimately gets you fired. The acting supervisor, Bradley Kersten's budget is so bad that the Bay Voice on January 4th gave him a question and answer instead of running on the front page on how great, financial stability Chesterfield's in. This is an example of the paper going easy on him without having to answer questions to be challenged or cross-checked. If the acting supervisor's budget was so great, again, it would have been on the front page of the Bay Voice the following week it was passed, with the acting supervisor's picture attached. The acting supervisor talks about construction beginning in the summer of '23 to bring a sanitary sewer to 26 in the I-94 corridor. The acting supervisor says the northern portion of the township is thriving with proposed development. Why doesn't he say thank you to the residents for paying for that sewer line, a handout he gave to the wealthy and well-connected, compliments of the hardworking taxpayers of Chesterfield? Builders and developers pay their own sewer line, not the taxpayers. The acting supervisor continues to be a wrecking ball on this township, and you've seen it tonight. Chesterfield Township is taking in, according to his budget, not mine, $45,642,605 in revenue for '23. But $49,000, $35, $239 is going out. That's $3 million more going out than coming in. I call this a recipe for disaster. The township is headed in the same direction that Bradley Kersten took the police department when he was in charge of that department. Bankruptcy. Some things never change. Where is the accountability in opening this? And folks, what I'm telling you, this is easy to cross-reference. The budget's online. It's here. You just go online. You go under your general fund. You look at what we're taking in and what's going out. The best thing in this budget, and I said it that night, and there's one thing I like, that there were no inter-transfer fees that were taken out from the public safety. So public safety is getting the full amount. That's the best thing in the budget. The rest of it is absolutely horrible. If you look at the budget and you really look at it closely, every year the deficit, the running deficits that we have continue to get worse. Nothing gets better. And I haven't heard a plan from the supervisor to correct that. And you know what? Trying to wave a wand to get Lisa McLean to give us money, it's not going to happen. You're going to have to work and make it happen. But you got to know how to make it happen in order for it to happen. So, but unfortunately, you know, we're stuck with what we have, and the rest of the board needs to step in and do their checks and balances and keep him in check. So this it's nothing personal, it's business. But, you know, the treasurer, Kathy, I mean, you're going to have to look at what he does closely, question it, and, you know, if you feel that it's not right, then you say no. So going along to get along is a recipe for disaster. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any more comments from the public?
Yes, my name is Mike Rayner, 26175 Jack Grove Lane, more commonly known as Mike the Bus Stop Guy. Won't go into it. I just had an opportunity to be exposed to the bus system here in the township, and I was discovered quite quickly some disappointments, and I would like to mention a few in particular. The first one is a lack of bus service, actually bus service that we had previously on 23 Mile Road, which was discontinued, I think, during the pandemic. In talking to the local employment agencies, they kind of jumped all over me thinking I was maybe from Smart Bus, because they're really disappointed that the many jobs that they have need to be accessed by 23 Mile Road, besides the many that we have on Gratiot that are being filled. So I think we need very desperately service resumed on 23, and I know that the board here has been working with Smart Bus, and I understand that the conversation hasn't ended on that, so I'm glad that we're talking about that. The other thing that came up was the appearance of the bus stops, which I thought, well, actually not the bus stops and my temporary attention-getting bus stops. It was kind of interesting because they complain about how it looks. Now, I put up more than four. I put up 4 shelters, and in doing so, I cleaned up considerable trash and unattractive surroundings, which I was then criticized about those lousy-looking bus stops out there, when actually I cleaned up a great deal of what actually was trash in the area. So as I did that, I discovered that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the property owner who has frontage on Gratiot, for instance, is really responsible for that property right up to Gratiot. Is that correct? I believe that's correct. So if it is correct, and I think it is, that means that all of the trash that you look up and down Gratiot in particular as well as 23 Mile Road, is actually the responsibility of the business that has frontage on that property. So I'm suggesting that perhaps we could send out a letter to those businesses reminding them of their responsibility. I was always also told that they could actually be fined if they didn't follow through on that. Now, a great example of that, as I come to work, as I come here, I take Cotton. And if you look on the left side of Cotton coming here, you know, there's that barricade around the ditch or whatever it is there with a great deal of trash there. There are a couple of areas of that fenced area that have been broken into where people go in. And so there's a lot of trash on that side, and there's trash on the other side where there's like a financial institution. Anyway, I think it would be helpful if we just alerted those businesses to their responsibility to clean it up. Also, SmartBus has a great program that they're not pushing. It's called Adopt a Stop. So I have both Meyer and Huntington Bank interested in perhaps maintaining that one on 23 and Gratiot. That's really the only one I think that we have. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I currently am taking care of it. It's a mess. And what bothers me a lot is that we tend to label those bus stops as things we don't want here because of who they bring here. And that disturbs me because it's like in any other situation, when you have a bad situation, there are a few that spoil it for the many, and oftentimes we kind of blanket the many as being perpetrators of these bad things. So I had 2 consecutive bus drivers stop, ironically, one day when I was cleaning that bus stop up, thanking me personally for that and sharing with me the many passengers that are grateful for that bus stop and for the 4 that I've erected. Now, the township has chosen to have me eliminate that. They called MDOT and said these have got to go. And so I was a little disappointed with that. Now they are considering they give me 60 days. I really would like to at least have them maintained until we're through the winter time. And hopefully, and I'm speaking to the board of directors of SmartBus at the end of this month as well, perhaps we'll be able to put a couple of more permanent, proper ones in there because we really need them. One especially south of 22 we need real badly. So anyway, just trying to help the community, and I think we do look pretty shabby. When that came up, I was kind of driving around looking, I thought, oh yeah, sure. So anyway, I think hopefully we can all take part. Unfortunately, most of the time, you know, it's kind of an all talk and no action. So I hope we see a little more action. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. And the smart discussions are ongoing.
Yeah, that's
We'll
great.
keep them going.
You'll recap that at some point in time?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further comments from the public?
Nancy Hutchinson, 49525 Callens Road. I apologize in advance if this is the wrong meeting or place to ask this question. And is this just for comments, or do you guys answer questions?
It's time for your comments.
Comments only.
If you have a question, you want to pose it, we'll answer it when,
If you know it, okay.
if we can.
Okay. Being surrounded and inundated by water, I'm curious to know the township's short-term and long-term plan to deal with the Phragmites. That's my question. Okay, thank you. Because you were scheduled to do it two years ago and it got canceled. Okay, thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public?
Adam Veschek, excuse me, 47468 Bayside Circle West. I've obviously missed a lot of meetings, but I'm trying to keep up online, and I wish I was more well-versed in the happenings of things here, but regarding the drainage presentation tonight and the state of affairs with that, you know, it's my understanding, you know, there's this activity on 26 Mile Road that's being done, you know, paid for by the township, when typically something like that would be paid for by the developers coming in. I don't know if that's all a done deal, but that's a lot of money being spent there. And on the flip side, you have what we looked at tonight, this piece of infrastructure that we own and are responsible for, and that is present day, future. You know, we used it and we're going to use it for the foreseeable future, and it's requiring a lot of money to repair. Why not use that money that was proposed for the 26-mile giveaway, if you will, and put it where it's truly needed on this project? So I'm not sure, you know, if you can answer those kind of questions, or like I said, if the 26-mile thing is a done deal and that's money already spent. But that's one question. And then my other is if you could comment on the state of affairs with the cannabis debacle that we find ourselves in as a township. It's an unfortunate state of affairs where we're at, but here we are. And I think it's a pretty important topic, and I'd like to hear more about it, at least where we are and how you feel about the future of it, because, you know, pretty much everything that involves the township was kind of within our control and within our own budget. But this particular topic, I think you could find yourselves on the wrong side of, and quickly out of control, out of your hands, if not handled properly. So I would really like to hear more about where things stand with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Couple things. First thing, moving through this calendar year, I am concerned about our budget, the township, how expenditures are going to come up, and you'll see them from week to week come up here. We had a presentation on the sewer tonight, how much it's going to cost. There'll probably be a vote on that in the near future, and you'll become property owners of that nice too. 4 individuals that spoke, thank you. I think this is a great venue for our residents to get up and you know, tell us what we need to do in our job. The Phragmite issue, that was a hot issue a few years ago, and it just seemed to kind of fallen off the face of the earth. A couple other issues that were brought up. I do want to mention is November 8th was election day, and just clarification, it's no longer the appointed supervisor. He's the elected supervisor now. He is the elected supervisor. And when Mr. Kersten was appointed to the police department as a police chief, he inherited from the prior management the fiscal situations. He didn't create them. I'm very, very, very concrete on that. That he ended up following some. I don't want to get into past chiefs, but I believe he did a yeoman job when there was talks about layoffs come around. He got the damage control. I know Mr. Joseph and Mr. LaFada, and there was a committee that worked, saved our police department. Probably kept from being contracted out, or which is not a good thing. So I just want that clarified. So everybody, I hope you're having a great New Year, and take care.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Thanks for touching on a couple of things I wanted to address as well. You can't close public comment with "it's not personal" when it's clearly personal. You just can't do it. And talking about a police department that is bankrupt, it's really a cheap shot. It's not fair. But if the supervisor wants to address that, I'll let him. The budget issues, they were well discussed during the budget debate. But this presentation about the budget was so bad that the Voice constructed a new venue for reporting on it. You're really taking liberties now with being in the press room at the Voice. I don't think you have any idea why there was a Q&A versus a full article, or you're making assumptions, you're reporting them as commonly known, and it's just not fair. It's really just not fair. But you know, again, I don't take issue with residents having a differing opinion, but I don't know there's been two tougher critics, and he's been our friend for as long as I've lived in the township, and he doesn't get a pass by me. So there's no I've never been referred to as a get along and go along guy. In fact, I get more comments that I should probably find more of that than anything. So, and asking the treasurer to oversee the supervisor, okay, that's enough on that. Mr. Rayner, I continue to be impressed with your community service, and I know that you do a tremendous amount of work. But I mentioned to you the last time you presented, you've taken on a persona, and you refer to yourself as the bus stop guy, and the Facebook posts, you know, you kind of learn first day on the internet. You can post the most pleasant thing in the world, and people are going to blast you for it. There's just no way around that. That goes with just, you know, internet access. And posting. You can see somebody will post something very nice about a meal they had in a particular restaurant, and there'll be 20 comments about how horrible the food was when they got there and how this place was better than that place. So that just goes with the territory. But what I worry about is this idea of, I appreciate first the advocacy for the bus riders, and I know that that's kind of the core of where you come from, but this idea that businesses should be fined or businesses should do more. There are easements that become filled with shopping carts and debris, and you know, the business, I think, could very easily, and I don't know if they have, but call and say, hey, there's somebody constructing a shanty on our property. You know, that is also the right of the business owner to say, I don't want this. And so it's a very tricky situation that requires a lot of collaboration. And I know in talking with fellow board members, I don't think anybody, but if you have differing information, I won't dispute it, that says the township called MDOT. I don't know that would have occurred. Perhaps if you know something I don't, again, I can't take issue with that. But I think if there was going to be an action taken, the township perhaps could utilize half a dozen ordinances and take those from a safety standpoint down, with just DPW being sent out to remove them. Because as I mentioned to you previously, I was concerned on a very high wind day and pulled over and just kind of pulled one back. It had blown into the utility pole and was kind of wedged there, and I thought had the wind come in a slightly different direction, it was out into traffic, and that would have been, you know, disastrous. And then here you are talking about my shanty, and I'm worried about the liability for you personally for constructing these things on what could be considered private property in some places. So
Mr. Rayner, this is our time, board time.
That's okay. I know his, but you're right, Mr. Kersten. The issue with them being stabilized and no longer potentially hazards of blowing into traffic also create another problem, which is if you study the engineering of those bus stops, they're designed for a possible wayward motorist that crashes into it to sort of break away from it. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and I think anybody who might go off the road and into one of those shelters, if they're not designed to be bus stops, we can all agree on that. And if one of those poles comes through a windshield and impales somebody, you're going to run into a whole host of problems that would be unfortunate because of your advocacy for bus riders and those who require public transportation. I would like to see an appropriate solution, and I think if nothing else, your efforts have called parties to the table that haven't been there before. So in that way, it's helpful, but I would caution you. Again, you're a pretty seasoned guy, and I don't want to be condescending in any way, but I'm not in favor of finding businesses and the like. The lady who spoke about the Phragmites, they were very heavily discussed for quite a long time, particularly when we were debating about whether or not the best eradication or control method was spraying. There were members of this board who were very, very concerned and voted no and consistently vote no on anything to do with chemicals being used as a control factor for Phragmites. There are a number of other methods, and Josh Sonnenberg has kind of led the way, along with our engineer who got involved at some point, and we've looked at even purchasing equipment. It's a very complicated invasive species that is very difficult to eradicate, and sometimes chopping it down actually acts as a spreader and getting into the root system and extracting the entire plant. It's a very, very difficult process and very expensive one. Sure, and so there are those that lose waterway, and I think Trustee Vosberg, if you recall, she's a user of the local waterways and is a big kayaker. And so she was able to speak personally about some of the areas that had been, cut off and constricted. And so the natural and quickest way is a spray, an herbicide in essence that goes in. And the one that's most commonly used terrifies me. And we have, other residents that come in who are on the water that talk about swans that nest on their property, and since the spraying, that population has diminished. So also the toxicity associated with how the chemicals are exacerbated in water and what that does to fish habitats and so forth. So it's a very complicated problem. We did spend a lot of time on it. I'm not sure what meeting that you were referencing that got canceled, but I think Oh, I see. Yeah, I do recall there was some spraying that was going to go up.
Hold up, ma'am. Hold up. This is our time. We can.
No, that's partly my fault. I should have addressed you, Mr. Supervisor. But lastly, I will just, Mr. Vershave, I appreciate your involvement. You when you moved into the township, started attending meetings, and have reached out to me. I know Trustee Anderson, and we encourage any resident who wants to know more about a particular issue. We may not be the expert, but we certainly have, background information that you can, take a look at and, do your own homework the way that we have. And I appreciate every time that you send an email. You have great questions, and it's clear that you want to learn more about, what's going on in the township. I'm not too sure what we're going to do with this sewer pipe that we heard in the presentation from Public Works Commissioner Miller. I'm curious to see what we do with the $13 million that we talked about bonding, because part of that was for the pump station. So now that we have the pump station, perhaps we could put some of that money somewhere else. So there's I'm sure going to be more conversations around that, and I look forward to that. And then I just wanted to touch on a few things that I wanted to really give some heartfelt thank yous. You mentioned the cannabis debacle. I couldn't agree with that word more. We had a much better path. There were those that were, I think just completely out of touch with what the residents wanted, and put us in a situation where they, voted in a way that demonstrated a lack of connectivity to the residents that we serve. So to think that the ballot initiative would go down 60-40 and it actually passes 60-40 is a tremendous disconnect from those that you represent. So we've been left with a position where work that had been done for the better part of 3 years, trying to educate and inform, was flatly rejected. So when the voters spoke convincingly, unfortunately, there were several leaders who were, starting from day one and playing catch-up. Some of them aren't quick studies to begin with, so that remedial work is very, very complicating. But I'm proud of the planning commissioners. They have, for the first time, you saw in that joint session, they came together and they've been reaching out. You actually have one individual who's with you tonight. I'd encourage you to stop and say hi. The S&D liquor store, formerly known as the Wine Valley. Two entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, great guys, Sean and David, who have reached out and come to a number of our cannabis meetings because they have business experience and a business model that lends itself to helping board members and commission members understand the industry. They're just great entrepreneurs who are working to try to get as much influence and insight and provide as much education as they can to make sure that this debacle becomes something that we can be proud of and actually generates revenue and enhances our community as opposed to endless lawsuits and the like. So again, thank you, Sean and David over at S&D Liquor, and we have some other really great in-house talent or in-community talent. Stavros Toma, a very successful young entrepreneur who has reached out to board members and planning commission members and offered his facilities and facilities that are part of his partners, and just an opportunity to come in and see all of the inner workings. Chris Aiello, who is a local attorney and resident of the township, John Johnson, who heads up a number of chamber groups and nonprofits, has also reached out to the board and taking board members and planning commission members out for tours. Mark Abraham, and also our planning commission members, the chair, Paul Miller, Rick LaBelle, Mark Renault. These are not cannabis people. They're not individuals who have a background in cannabis, so they're trying to educate themselves and understand all of the inner workings of the cannabis industry, and not only the regulatory ordinances, but the zoning ordinances, and they have a lot of insight. And they've been very helpful to me over the years, and now they are, doing a crash course for those that, chose to put their head in the sand for 3 years. But we'll get there, and we'll hopefully avoid that debacle that you're talking about. I fear for it, too. I would also like to say thank you to the finance and treasurer teams. I know work has been very, very difficult for them, and this is unfortunately, it's become the season of, changing accounts and moving money around, and this idea that we can invest here and return a bigger yield there, and inevitably what's happens is we end up bouncing checks or having no money in accounts to make payroll. And so I know the finance and treasurer teams are particularly vulnerable because when things go south, they're usually the ones that are left holding the bag, but they continue to come in, day out, and work very hard, and I appreciate them. Our public safety team, big thank yous to them, in particular Captain McNair. He's a hard-working guy, but he anticipates having some pretty long hours as part of the administrative team, a vital part of the administrative team. He relies on, his boss, Director Bassett, and also his direct subordinate, Lieutenant Kroll. As Trustee Anderson mentioned, Director Bassett will be attending Fire Academy. His background is in police work, and as the public safety director, the component of the fire is something that he indicated he was committed to doing, and he is going all in with a full academy, which will take him out of the township for several months. Also, Lieutenant Kroll will be attending staff and command, and she will be back and forth from the township, leaving Captain McNair to, you know, and I anticipate he's up for the challenge, but he's been a great asset. And one of the people that, you know, when I heard Mr. Speaker talk about the police department going bankrupt, which never happened, by the way, but it was then Sergeant McNair, who worked with me in my first term for what we called the police layoff moratorium. We had much debate about those layoffs, and it was Trustee DeMink who was the final vote that allowed us to stop those layoffs and put a committee together to look at other ways to solve the crisis back then. This is many years ago. Treasurer Hartman was part of that team as well, and we came up with the Police Layoff Moratorium Board. And Sergeant McNair, who was a very strong advocate and still is from rank and file from the union, they came to the table in a non-contract year and talked about giving up things like uniform allowances and their OPEB contributions, and everybody sort of pitched in, and we were able to keep from having to lay off. But you know, to talk about it being a mismanaged department by then Chief Kersten just lacks insight. And I don't know where you got your information, because you weren't a resident here, I know that, and I didn't see you at any of the meetings, but you're way wrong there. And so, you know, if you're going to come after the police department in an attempt to stab at him, just know that you're going to drag me in there, because I take very seriously attacks on the police department, and that's one I'm just not going to be cool with at all. I would also like to thank Public Works Commissioner Candace Miller. Not only was the presentation solid, but she doesn't shy away from tough questions. She's been at every level of government, and I've been a big student and fan of her work, going all the way back to Harrison Township, before she was our Secretary of State, before she was our 10th Congressional District Congresswoman, and of course now in her capacity as the Public Works Commissioner. And what I admired most about her work as a trustee, Secretary of State, wherever she went, she advocated for the group that she was elected to represent at that particular moment. And so you don't find a better or stronger advocate for Selfridge than Candace Miller. And when she was Congresswoman, she did a lot of work just to keep the base vibrant. But when she was at Harrison Township, and there was talk of base operations changing dramatically, and you know, you're going back decades now, there was talk of private aircraft and commercial aircraft, and she stood up for Harrison Township, said independent of what Selfridge does for the region, that can't happen here, and she has always advocated for us. So for her to say, we did have a very robust dialogue, and it got kind of ugly when this sewer pipe was brought up several years ago, but I'm not interested in receiving an asset that could have or maybe should have been maintained by other communities that got 26 years out of its life. And so to ask those questions on behalf of the residents I serve is a difficult thing to do. She's a very, very powerful individual, and nobody wants to run afoul of her. But I watch events where she is appearing, and you will see politician after politician line up to get their belly rubbed and say favorable things, and to get their picture taken and get her endorsement, and those are all good and well. But if you're elected to represent the residents of Chesterfield and your interests potentially conflict with the Public Works Commissioner, you have got to be prepared to ask respectfully. And when I assured her that I will, and she said, "That's your job," I can't tell you what that meant to me, because it is our job, and it's not always fun. And you know that politically, you run a very, very dangerous gauntlet there, trying to advocate for residents and not anger those who have tremendous influence and power. But I think she respects that. I know she respects that because she's done it her whole career, and I assure you that I will ask those tough questions respectfully of her. Last thing I want to say is the Friends of Chesterfield Police will hold their monthly meeting. This is a special meeting this week on Thursday at the police department at 6:30. It is a meeting just prior to the biggest fundraiser that the Friends of Chesterfield Police put on, which will be on January 20th. Information about the bowling fundraiser, Bowling 5.0 as they call it, is available online. And I would like to point out to those that are interested in attending, we have some new management, some new leaders that have stepped up at the Friends of Chesterfield Police. They got some great ideas, and I'm very excited about the future of the Friends group. And this fundraiser that we have coming up looks to be very, very special. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Domingue.
A couple things that my fellow trustees touched on. I'd like to shout out to Candace Miller and her team for being here and providing the information they did so we can see where we're going. Also to Lisa McLean's office, advocating for us and getting us $4 million for the Domingue Pump Station down on Jefferson, which is a great shout out and saving us a lot of money. In regards to the questions regarding the cannabis at planning, it's been discussed at planning. Giffords Webster at the last meeting last week brought some ideas from zoning and different things that the planning commissioners need to look at. I know several of the commissioners have gone out to different places that produce the cannabis, whether retail, production, or that, and they've looked at it. So they are working on it, but it's a process, and they're working on it. They still got to get the zoning right and the rules and all that. So those guys are working on that. The last thing I want to touch on is the same thing Trustee Anderson and Joseph touched on. Back in July of 2021, 6 of us sitting up here, Trustee Anderson, Joseph, myself, Fosberg, Clerk Berry, and Treasurer Elliott, we appointed Brad Kersten, our Public Safety Director, to the position of Supervisor. 6-0 vote. Right, Dave and Hank? 6-0 vote. So he was acting. So he ran it for a year, and then he ran for re-election. November 8th, he won. So, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, he's not acting. He's elected. He beat you. He beat you bad. And he is the supervisor elected by the residents of this township. So get over the acting. He's the elected supervisor. Trustee Anderson, Trustee Joseph have said it, and I'm going to say it too. He's here, and he's here till 2024, and it's what he does after that is whatever he wants. But he is the supervisor. He's not acting or appointed. He's the elected by the residents of this township. That's all I got to say, and happy 2023 to everybody. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Happy New Year, everyone. I want to say congratulations to Sean Elliott. Sean is not related to me, but he will be bringing a lot of experience and a lot of great ideas to the Parks and Recs Commission, so I'm very happy about that. I wanted to also say thank you to Commissioner Miller for the work that they have done on the Chesterfield Interceptor. I want to thank Karen Garby here for the great work that she did with Lisa McLean's office, and that was a $4 million win. That's a huge win. That has been a great day when I heard that news. I'm excited for this year. Really excited. Before this meeting, about 15 minutes before this meeting, I actually stopped at the supervisor's office and I said, I'm very excited for this year. We've had a lot of very important conversations in the last week and a half here within the township about a lot of the questions that you guys are asking tonight and a lot of things that how Deputy Duchesne says all the time, we've spent the money 4 times over, 5 times over, 20 times over. He'll say it in every meeting. And that is it with municipal government. Everything is, there's always more bills than there is money, right? And it's a matter of planning when you're going to spend things and how you're going to spend it and on what bucket. There's different buckets. So, and I think that in our conversations in the last few weeks with the supervisor, he has a solid handle on it, a really solid handle. That isn't surprising to me. The reason why I voted for him originally was because in the years of experience long before he was a supervisor, as a resident and as a board member, working with Brad in various capacities, he's always been a very strong administrator. He does a very great job. Did a great job at the police department, and he's doing a great job here. And maybe those who are political opponents don't see that, but of course that's their choice. As far as looking at what he does or his decisions or anything, whether it's me or any other board member here in this township, everybody and residents and business owners, everybody calls Brad all the time. On vacation, on weekends, on Sundays, on Saturdays, during the holidays. He gets a lot of questions all the time. He is constantly making himself available to answer those questions, and he's done a great job. He does share a lot of information, I think more than any other supervisor, and has done a good job with that. And I have no complaints. So I don't agree to just agree. I think that's of reach to say that. I don't have battles here at the board. We have a lot of conversations because both of us are here all the time. So we'll have a lot of conversations all day long. And by the time we get to the board meeting, I've asked a lot of the questions already. Mr. Rayner, thank you for your commitment to the Smart Bus and to the folks who are using that. I know that you're very passionate, and I appreciate your passion. And to Mrs. Hutchinson on the Phragmites, I ask about the Phragmites all the time. We've had a lot of discussions, and I know that maybe we haven't had those openly here, but we actually went out on tour, myself and Karen and Josh, several of us went and toured all of the facilities, and we looked at the Phragmites, and we talked about the different ways that we can go forward. And so it is very much a part of the conversation this season, and the supervisor is probably going to touch on that as well. The 26-mile infrastructure funding, as well as this Chesterfield interceptor funding, are both conversations that have been on the table for the 2 years that I've been here, and continue to be. How do we do all of these things, and what are the different ways? Part of the Midwest agreement is we're going to be working them very hard, trying to get as much grants and funding and help, and we have a very long list of things that we want to do. That we are going to be asking them to help us get the ball down the court. As far as the cannabis, there's a lot of political rhetoric that's been passed along with the cannabis conversation. You're welcome to believe what you want or do your own investigation. I would say that it would help you if you would sit in on a planning commission meeting, and you will find that our planning commission is extremely professional, very well qualified. They have a good handle on it, and I don't believe that we are in a debacle, and I have faith in them. And if you watch the joint board meeting, you'll see that they are asking the right questions and doing their job. And let's continue to let them do their job. The finance and treasurer team, they are in a great position. I'm excited to see all of the things they are doing more efficient, more work, more efficiently than they have ever done. I'm very proud of them. We have completely new systems that we have put into place, the BSNA system. They have trained everybody. They have cross-trained. They are putting policies and procedures together. They are doing everything. at a level that we have never done before. And there has never been any issue with payroll, and so I'm disappointed to hear the misinformation that was given to a trustee. There is no money issues here at the township. There has been I have renegotiated with all of the banks that we operate with accounts that have been in existence for years that we're not getting interest rates, and I have renegotiated those for interest-bearing accounts, and we're getting 3% on our checking accounts currently, which they were non-interest-bearing accounts. So there is no money that's been moved differently than it's been in the past. And I believe that is it that I have for the night. So wish everyone a Happy New Year and a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Elliott. Real quick, welcome Sean Elliott. Thank you for staying through the meeting. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Candace Miller and her entire staff for meeting with us and then coming tonight and offering to make that presentation. Just a few notes administratively. We did issue to the board members the Platte Moran review. We are diligently working to implement many of those processes, which are going to take it's going to take some time to develop and get them in place. So there is a short video. I wanted you to see that. We did videotape it for you. That is in the email, and if you have any questions, please reach out. I'd also like to thank Congresswoman Lisa McClain and particularly her legislative aide Carrie Jantz that came tonight. We worked closely with for the last 6 months to get this $4 million to the township, and it does impact how we move forward with several other projects. So to answer that question, Trustee Joseph, yes, it is on the radar. Now we've got to see where we go with it. Thank you, board members, for the verbal and vocal support to a sore loser. That's all I can classify it as. I appreciate it. There is nothing there. What we will be seeing, and most of you keyed on it, is there are going to be some difficult decisions to be made as far as infrastructure that's brought up in the next couple months. The Chesterfield interceptor pipe is something that we've inherited. It's been problematic. I'm aware of that problem. The township attorney has been diligently working on that resolution to present to the board to see where we want to go with it. The issue that we have with that is it's in Chesterfield, it's buried in Chesterfield, and right now Chesterfield residents use it. And as you can see, it's degrading annually. Ma'am, as far as the Phragmites, we'll keep working on it. We're members of those groups that canceled. It is a statewide issue, and as Trustee Joseph said, there's no answer. It's either chemical, manual, and the issue is who's responsible for it. Are we as a township? It's in a state waterway, and we don't control the waterways, much like the roadways. So we're just the ears listening. I hear you. I think the entire board has heard you, and you're literally left with manual removal or chemicals. Neither are good solutions. So stick around tonight. I'll try and answer you. We'll try and get you in the right direction. Again, Trustee Joseph covered this, and Treasurer Elliott covered this cannabis debacle. I don't know if that was misstated. Residents spoke. We have to deal with it. Now we've got to get to the point to where it's managed, and how we manage it, we're in that process now. So as you were already offered, it is in planning. There are public hearings that will be scheduled in the future, and please participate in it, come to the meeting, get involved. We'll make everything as public as we can if you can't make it. We had you saw a short snippet tonight of the direction that I would like to go to with our social media pages with short videos on how to enhance our experience for our residents. It is my hope to continue doing those through every department within the township. Again, we'll put them out on our social media page, but I'll try and keep you involved at the trustee level with all the information that I can provide you. And this goes back to your original conversation. Anything that we do day to day here, I will try and make sure I will make sure that at least Karen or myself gets it to you so you're aware and you're not left out seeking information. So, with that being said, I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Speaker, you're not relevant. Your vote doesn't count, so please keep quiet. Meeting's adjourned.